Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 741, written by HasNoStyle, Order from Chaos. I worked at a call center that took after-hour calls for doctors' offices. We would then create a ticket and send a request for a nurse or doctor to call back the client about X issue. You would expect that the issues people called in about would be varied and random, but that wasn't always the case. There would be unexplainable convergences of issues. Like more than 50% of the calls being about a particular, normally uncommon issue that wasn't illness related but more behavior related. For example, someone fell down. There would also be runs of people with the same name, like too many people all named Heather. The oddest thing to happen was name-related. There was a famous family feud in history, so family last name A and family last name B. Neither of these are terribly common last names, and as first names, they are absolutely unheard of. Yet one night, within an hour of each other, I got a call from someone with last name A as a first name, and another with last name B as a first name too. It just seemed that at times what was going on could be more explained by malfunctioning random algorithms than real-life natural variety. Does anyone else that works with volumes of people or issues ever see these types of odd convergences? Case notes for file 741, Order from Chaos. It could definitely be a glitch, but it also can just be a representation of true randomness. Most people expect true randomness to be somewhat orderly. It's a weird intuitive sense that we have, but when you have a truly random system, things can repeat often. So the first part of the glitch probably isn't a glitch. The fact that, on some days you have 50% of calls that are just, oh, I fell down, which is rare normally, but some days just can happen. Say if you have a string of repeating numbers that are entirely randomly generated, maybe from the chaos of the atmosphere, which is one way to approximate true randomness, then you'll often have numbers that repeat, even up to 10 digits or more. So you have 7, 7, 7, 7, and so on for like 9 or 10 times, and then maybe zeros all the way through. Now the second part of the story is more intriguing. If you have two very rare names back to back, a sort of glitch in terms of how the universe displays and pushes in NPC interaction with us. Because I do think that's possible. I think it's even likely that not every single human being we interact with is animated, so to say. Sometimes I think some people are just NPCs, approximations of a human being, and hard to distinguish, but not entirely possessed of the spirit or soul that we have. And I think this is the case because if this is a test or a simulation or some sort of environment that's controlled, well, you can't have every single human being animated in that way, because then there would be no way to truly control or even really influence anything. You could influence the world, I guess, but you need to have more direct control over individuals, and this is a way to do it. You have NPCs that are controlled by the developers, or programmed by them at least, given a set of parameters. That makes more sense to me. So this might just be an example of that. Bonus file, written by callmejimothee, the casino medium. I used to work at a casino. One night I was approached by an elderly woman asking about paging someone over the intercom. I tried to explain where to go, but she insisted I personally walk her to the desk where they can do that. As I walked her through the casino, she started talking to me. She mentioned she was a medium and how her family has always strictly advised her against sharing that information with people. When you work in a casino, you encounter a lot of scammers and odd people. I was polite, but tried not to engage with her much on the topic. As we kept walking, she said something to me about my sister. I stopped and asked how she knew my sister. She didn't, but started talking to me at great lengths about my family. At this particular time, my sister was going through a very difficult time in life that was impacting our family as a whole. I was skeptical, but curious. As she went on, I was careful to neither confirm or deny anything, but just listen to what she had to say. She went into great detail about how my father, mother, and even I played into the current situation. She even began to become visibly emotional, as if she could feel what my mother was feeling. I was utterly astonished. as she told me that I, being the oldest and most diplomatic in my family dynamic, needed to be more outspoken with everyone involved. Everything she had told me was undeniably accurate and insightful, but then she shifted her focus. She told me about someone I worked with and went into great detail about what this person looked like and how they felt about me. She talked about the dynamic between us and advised me to take caution. At this point, she had lost me. I couldn't think of a single person or relationship in my working life that fit that description. I began becoming more skeptical again and reminded her I needed to get back to work and to keep walking towards our destination. She kept talking to me as we walked, and I began to once again find myself astonished as to not just what she was telling me, but also how she would go about it, her body language, expressions, and emotional energy. As we got closer, she abruptly stopped walking. When I noticed, I did as well and turned back to her. Before I could say anything else, she placed her palm at the base of my sternum above my belly button just below where my ribcage started. I immediately noticed a physical sensation. I became paralyzed and almost felt like she was stealing the breath from my body. I started becoming hyper-aware of my surroundings, the lights and dings from the electronic games, the mass amounts of people walking by. But everything seemed to be in slow motion or almost as if I was leaving my body. It could have been only a few seconds, it could have been 20 minutes, I don't know. But I felt as if I couldn't breathe and had weakness in my knees. I started to feel like I was on the verge of passing out. Casino security saw this encounter and approached us. When security interrupted us to ask what was going on, it must have startled her because I felt this shockwave through my entire body. She jerked her hand back and started apologizing profusely to me. As soon as she pulled her hand back, I was able to breathe again and gain control back of my body. I was completely freaked out. It must have been visible because security kept asking me if I was okay. I assured them everything was fine and they walked off. I turned back to the woman who was still apologizing and she said, "If you don't do something about that ulcer, it's going to kill you." I was so freaked out, I told her thanks, but I have to go back to work now and quickly head back to my office. Not only was I in a bizarre headspace, but I noticeably was completely void of physical energy. The entire experience was the most profound encounter of my life, and I will never forget those words and physical sensations. I was having a lot of stomach issues at the time, but I was far too scared to get medical verification of an ulcer. I had already previously suspected it, and was a potential side effect of the medication I was on at the time. But if that wasn't bizarre enough on its own, it gets even weirder. The encounter happened nearly 10 years ago. And it has sat with me ever since. But recently I was reflecting back on it. I realized that the second part about the coworker that initially made no sense, all of a sudden did. That entire situation played out in my life a few years ago. The description of the person and the very specific details were 100% spot on from what was described to me 10 years ago. I even realized that the entire situation was initiated nearly 7 years to the day from the moment this woman described it to me. Not only were the two incidents separated by 7 years, but the person she described I hadn't even met yet and was in an entirely different state and company. I don't know what to make of this. I'm curious what other people think. I am open to this type of stuff, but I've always approached these situations skeptically. Case notes for the bonus file. The Casino Medium. Well, first off, I get The Mentalist vibes, which was a phenomenal show, and I wish they'd make shows like that again. One of my favorite types of shows is, well, sort of like the Sherlock-style series, where there's a protagonist that is extremely intelligent, far beyond anyone else on the show. They're living in their own world, 10, 20 steps ahead of everyone else, and it's just fun to see how they solve problems and kind of show off sometimes. The protagonist is a mentalist, but he was making people believe that he could interact with spirits of the dead and loved ones would pay money. Of course, it was a scam. He wasn't really a medium. You can get all kinds of information from people online now. That said, the description of this interaction does go beyond that, given that she touched you and you were feeling all kinds of weirdness from it. Now, maybe some sort of drug is involved there, But that seems less likely the more I think about it, because as soon as she removed her hand, her palm from your chest, you instantly felt more aware, not fully recovered from whatever happened. But if it was a drug, it wouldn't just be a drug that as soon as you remove the injection site, you instantly feel normal or normal-ish again. To my knowledge, there's no drug that works that way. So there may be something to this story. Maybe she is in possession of some sort of power that enables her to connect directly with someone, especially after touching them. She knew you had an ulcer issue, or at least that it was possible that you did. Also, I understand your apprehension and fear of hospitals and getting checkups. I do not like hospitals. I do not like anything related to drugs or medications or needles or anything like that.